Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, an insane night in North Carolina politics as the 2026 primary elections are here and gone. I'll break down all the races coming up. And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app by checking out the Nick Craig Show. Just search for it, tap the subscribe or follow button, and take a new program with you each and every weekday morning. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our program this morning, as always, is brought to you by Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group. We thank them for their support. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on this very sleep-deprived Wednesday edition of the Nick Craig Show. What else is there to say? An insane night in North Carolina politics. The primary elections are now here and for the most part done. There are still some very close races that we'll work through over this busy next hour today. But they are here and gone, and it was one of the more interesting primary election nights, I would argue, in modern North Carolina political history. Let's start off with the two big races that many individuals were watching across the state. The Senate primary elections on both the Democrat and Republican side of the aisle. And no surprise here, a former Democrat governor, Roy Cooper, having a very good election night. I will note that all of these results will remain officially unofficial up until next Friday when the county canvass takes place and all of the election results are certified in all 100 counties. But with this, Roy Cooper, 92% of the vote in the Democrat primary, pulling out more than 758,000 votes. A very handed election night victory for him. Served recently 8 years in the governor's mansion, 2 terms, term limited out. Spent, 12 years, 14 years before that as the state's attorney general. A very well-known political figure in North Carolina, a very well-known Democrat, and he is going to be an absolute force to be reckoned with as we head towards November. And I will encourage every Republican, every conservative that is in earshot of this program, keep your eye on the prize. It is not infighting. It is not having a contest over who is the bigger or better conservative. It is about defeating the failed 8-year governor in Roy Cooper. That is what the rest of this year is about. We know what Roy Cooper's policies are. We know his complete and total incompetent nature of leadership. Case in point, NCORE. Folks in eastern North Carolina have waited 10 years to get back in their homes. Why is that the case? Because the entity that Roy Cooper spun up when he was in the governor's mansion after Hurricanes Matthew and Florence miserably failed. No accountability, no direction, no leadership. That is not who you want representing your state, one of the 2 individuals representing your state in the United States Senate. You just can't have it. Roy Cooper spoke at an election night party last night. This is what he had to say.
So, guys, we know we've got our work here, and it's just beginning. We have a long way to go until November. Hey, but if you want change in Washington, do you? Yeah! This campaign is for you. If you want to toss out the D.C. insiders, do you? This campaign is for you. You know, if you just think things cost too much, do you? This campaign is for you. I've never been in a race that this crucial for the people of North Carolina and for our country. And I need all of you to get this job done.
Now, I'm not trying to be overly critical of the governor. I disagree with 99% of his policies. I think he's a terrible leader and a terrible politician. However, I will note that this was his whole comments, which ran about 8 minutes last night, were not very good. This whole, you want a guy that wakes up every morning and puts his pants on one leg at a time? Do ya? Woo! Do you want a guy that is from the state of North Carolina? Do ya? Woo! Do you want a guy that eats breakfast, lunch, and dinner each and every day? Do you? I mean, the whole thing was just really weird. Roy is, for the most part, a pretty decent public speaker. I don't know what was going on with him last night, but he did not have a strong showing. His whole comments and whole speech was very bizarre, and he opined on, well, why he's running.
Let me tell you why I'm running.
Okay.
I'm running for the hard-working parent who's tired of seeing higher costs at the grocery store and scared that the family won't be able to make ends meet. I'm running for farmers like Jeanette and Joyce in Mount Olive who are struggling to afford what they need to grow their crops, seeing equipment costs spike and watching their bottom line evaporate because of the tariffs. I'm running for Meredith in Winston-Salem and her daughter Vivian, who might lose her medical treatment because of right-wing attacks on health care. I'm running because I love North Carolina, and things just should not be this hard for the people who live here. It is time for a change. Now, you know, I didn't plan to go to Washington.
No, of course not. Now, hold on a second here. I hate this more than you can possibly imagine. I didn't want to go to Washington. Well, then why'd you get in the race? I despise any politician, Democrat or Republican, that makes this point. If you didn't want to go to Washington, if you didn't want to run for Senate, if you didn't want to run for Congress, if you didn't want to run for president, then don't run. Don't give me this, oh, shucks, I didn't really want to do this. Then why did you run, Roy? Because it's a very lucrative opportunity to you. You're a very well-known political figure in North Carolina. Don't blow smoke up my rear end on that.
Service has been here in North Carolina because this is where I wanted to serve, right here at home. But these are not ordinary times. Everyday people are being left behind. And we see the chaos that's coming out of Washington only making it worse. The cost of groceries, child care, utilities, rent, health care, skyrocketing. Just overnight, we saw the price of gas spike. Yet another burden on working families. Meanwhile, the D.C. insiders are making sure that the wealthiest among us are getting further ahead, all at your expense, and it's not right. I knew that I needed to run for this Senate seat because Washington, D.C. is broken, and North Carolinians are struggling because of it.
Well, there you go. North Carolinians are struggling, and old Roy Cooper has got all of the answers. It wasn't long into his comments that he turned his attention to his general election opponent in Michael Whatley.
But now, a new challenge awaits. I'll take that same problem solving to Washington that I used here in North Carolina to focus on what matters. My opponent, who just won his primary tonight, is an out-of-touch D.C. insider and big oil lobbyist who's only looking out for himself and his well-connected friends in Washington. He has pushed schemes that raise health care costs, make communities less safe, and make life harder and more expensive for working families. How out of touch is Michael Whatley? While your costs go up, Michael Whatley says prices are down. When your local law enforcement needs more funding to make communities safe, Michael Whatley supports DOGE cuts that take money away from them. When you wish you could afford your health care premium, Michael Whatley celebrates a bill that makes it cost even more. It's dead wrong, and it's got to change. Let me tell you who I'll be.
Oh, sure.
I'll be a strong, independent senator who will work with this president when I can and stand up to him when the people need me to. I will always put the people of North Carolina first, before politics, before party. The people of North Carolina will be my total focus as I serve in the United States Senate. I'll work with anyone, anywhere, from any party to help make our state better and to make stuff cost less. Because, really, what's the point of holding office if you aren't focused every day on how to get something done for the working people who need it? There is no doubt about it. We have a long and difficult road ahead. But even during these tough times, those of you who know me know this is true, I am filled with hope. We have a real opportunity here to return our government in Washington to the people where it belongs. Together, with the help of everybody here and those watching at home, we will lower costs for working families and win this seat in the United States Senate. God bless our great state and our great country. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're up against. If you want to spend the next 8 months in a circular firing squad attacking other Republicans, then you are okay with the out-of-control, incompetent, progressive former governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, being your next U.S. Senator. You just heard it straight from the horse's mouth. That is what Roy Cooper stands for. That is what Roy Cooper wants to do, and that is what he will do if voters in this state, conservatives and Republicans, decide that they're going to take their ball and go home because their candidate didn't win. That is what we are looking down the barrel at. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. Then you're not a conservative. You're not a Republican. Again, you don't have to be those things, but you're not. If you're okay with getting Roy Cooper elected to the United States Senate, then you're not. You're not a conservative. You're not a Republican. I'm never going to refer to you as one. You can't call yourself one. That's not how this process plays out. That is what we are staring down the barrel at. Turning our attention to the other side of the aisle, the Republican Senate primary also taking place last night. And this one, not really much of a contest as well, with former head of the North Carolina Republican Party and RNC, Michael Whatley, in a handed election night victory. Again, still unofficial totals, with 64.6% of the vote, more than 404,000 votes for him across the state of North Carolina. Don Brown, who was seen to be, apparently in many conservative circles, was described as the real winner in this race, the guy that was going to give Michael Whatley a run for his money. That just did not materialize. Don Brown failing and not even able to crack 16% in this statewide primary, unable to convince even 100,000 conservative and Republican voters across the state to support him. An election night overwhelming victory for Michael Whatley, and he is going to be the candidate that is going to face up against the 8-year governor here in the state of North Carolina. Whatley, similar to Cooper, had an election night party in Charlotte last night. This is how he opened his comments.
Tonight is an important night. Republican voters from across the state are united because the stakes for North Carolina are too high to stay divided. And tonight, we begin the next chapter of this campaign together. Because this election is bigger than a primary. This election is a choice. A choice between leadership that stands with working families or a choice for career politicians who prioritize radical special interests from California and New York. A choice between safer communities or politicians who protect criminals and illegal aliens to appease radical left-wing groups. A choice between supporting the men and women in uniform who protect our interests and allies around the world, or politicians who vote to deny essential military funding, leaving America weak. A choice between a conservative champion for North Carolina, who will be an ally for President Trump in the Senate, or a champion for the failed policies of the left.
And that's exactly what they are. They are failed policies of the left, and it is time for Republicans and conservatives across the state of North Carolina to unify behind the candidate that had an overwhelming election night victory. Folks, whether you were a Don Brown supporter or not. I like Don Brown. I didn't vote for him, but I like Don Brown, thought he was a good enough guy. He got killed in the election. He couldn't even crack 100,000 votes. 64 to 15%. It's not close. It's almost a 50-point margin. It's not a close election night victory by any stretch of the imagination. And so it is time to unify behind Michael Whatley or lose to Roy Cooper. Those are your two options. You have option either A or B. There's no C, there's no D, there's no E, there's no F. It's A and B. Either Michael Whatley wins and we continue to hold 2 Senate seats here in North Carolina as Republicans, or you give it over to Roy Cooper. And if you're a fan of Roy Cooper, I say have at it. Michael Whatley is not.
You know, for 8 years, Roy Cooper had a choice. Stand with law-abiding families or give in to the radical left. And for 8 years, Roy Cooper sided with the radical left. It was Roy Cooper who marched with Antifa and BLM while our cities were burning in 2020.
Yes, he did.
It was Roy Cooper who signed an executive order forcing cashless bail and pretrial release into our criminal justice system, creating a revolving door that put violent criminals back on the streets again and again and again. And it was Roy Cooper who released more than 4,000 prisoners, including pedophiles, rapists, and murderers, back into our communities. Among those on Cooper's list were 51 inmates serving life sentences and DeCarlos Brown Jr., who went on to murder Irina Zarotska right here in Charlotte. Law enforcement warned against it. Families worried about their safety. And Roy Cooper did it anyway. Roy Cooper sided with criminals, and North Carolina communities have paid the price. I stand with North Carolina families, and I will always back the blue.
So there's just a little bit of Cooper. Everything that Michael Whatley lays out are things that Roy Cooper is responsible for in large part during his time in the executive mansion or his time as the attorney general or his time in the North Carolina General Assembly. And if you're okay with those things, then yeah, go out and spend the next 8 months attacking Michael Whatley and attacking Republicans. If that's who you want representing you in Washington, D.C., have at it. I'm not the politics police. If you want to throw away your vote and don't want to show up and vote for a Republican candidate because you don't think he's conservative enough, you don't think he's this enough, you don't think he's that enough, then you want Roy Cooper to win. Don't call yourself conservative. I'm not interested in listening to you. I don't care what your opinion is. And I will say this, it is very disheartening to see even early this morning, just hours after the election results are all posted online, which happened around 11:30 last night, around midnight. I already saw these so-called grassroots organizers, these so-called grassroots Republicans and conservatives across North Carolina ignoring the results of the election, claiming that Don Brown should sue the North Carolina Republican Party, that this election was not accurate and right. I mean, give me a break. You lost. In elections, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And Michael Whatley highlights something very important here in his closing comments. The primary is one thing. It's a nasty, dirty battle and fight, and it should be. But then we have to coalesce and get behind our candidate as we head into November. And that's where Michael Whatley says he is right now.
North Carolina did not just choose a nominee. You chose a direction. A campaign built on safe communities, strong families, economic opportunity, and putting North Carolina first. I will work every day to earn the trust of every North Carolinian who wants safer streets, affordable living, and a stronger future. Tonight is not the end of a campaign. Tonight is the beginning of a movement. A movement to restore common sense leadership. A movement to stand with working families instead of criminals. A movement to make North Carolina safer, stronger, and more affordable. Our state's best days are still ahead, and together, we're going to win in November.
The option of not winning, which would be B in that equation, as I mentioned, is absolutely terrifying. We very clearly know where Roy Cooper stands. We know where his politics is. As much as he wants to try and play this country boy, oh shucks, kind of normal everyday guy, he's not. Roy Cooper is a radical, out-of-control progressive. You saw it in action here in North Carolina. I'm not satisfied with that leadership. I didn't like Roy Cooper's leadership. I don't like his politics. And I can sure as hell tell you that I am not going to sit here and give him, Roy Cooper, the opportunity to win this election by having a big battle over whether Michael Whatley is conservative enough. Whether every idea and every principle he has is the best thing that exists. He won the primary. He has a great track record at the NCGOP and the RNC. President Donald Trump endorsed him. So for all the so-called MAGA grassrooters out there, your boy endorsed him. So get on board or get out. Those are your two options. Spending the next 8 months attacking the Republican nominee will guarantee a failure for the Republicans here in North Carolina and give another term to Roy Cooper. You thought he was bad as governor? Just wait till you see what he does in the United States Senate. I'm not interested in that. Maybe you are. Maybe you pretend that you're a conservative. Maybe you LARP around on social media or go to your stupid meeting with 12 people and pretend that you're some Mr. or Mrs. MAGA conservative. If you're going to allow Roy Cooper to win this primary because you can't get over the fact that Don Brown got his ass kicked, you're an idiot. He lost fair and square. Don't believe me? Look at the freaking election results. 64-15. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a close race. This is not within any margin of error. This is exactly where we thought it was going to turn out. I'm going to be honest. Don Brown results are even lower than I thought. I thought he'd crack 20%. He's been campaigning for a year. I guess maybe I need to check some of my bias as it relates to the echo chamber in which I get some information on social media. These are the results. Sometimes your candidate wins, sometimes your candidate loses. The question is, do these so-called grassroots organizers on the right, they have the balls to get over an election loss and say, you know what, my guy didn't win. Maybe Michael, I don't agree with everything he says. Maybe he's not the picture-perfect candidate in my eyes, but he sure as hell is a lot better than Roy Cooper. I'll go back to what I mentioned yesterday morning. This idea from the great Ronald Reagan. Somebody that you agree with 80% of the time and disagree with 20% of the time is an 80% friend, not a 20% foe. And this is a major problem that the GOP is facing, not only here in North Carolina, but across the country. And I guess at a certain point, maybe these people just love losing. I mean, that's kind of what it seems like. We see this in statewide election after statewide election. We see this at the NCGOP convention every 2 years. We see this at county conventions across the state as well. Maybe you just love getting your ass kicked. I don't. I enjoy winning. I enjoy having electoral success. I enjoy beating Democrats. When you boil all of this down, it is about beating Democrats. And if you're not on board with that, if you don't want to do that, if you don't think that's okay, if you're all buddy-buddy with those on the political left, then just change your freaking party affiliation. Become a Democrat. It's fine. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to be upset at you. I'm not here to be the politics police. Just change your party affiliation and become a Democrat. Get out of the Republican Party. We're going to try and go win this election. It's going to be tough. Roy Cooper has nearly 100% name identification. He has served in public office for like 40 freaking years. He is going to be damn near impossible to beat. But he will be 100% impossible to beat if those on the so-called political right are going to spend the next 8 months trashing Michael Whatley and trashing the Republican Party. If you wanted a different result, then you should have worked harder for Don Brown. You should have worked harder for Michelle Morrow or Thomas Johnson, whoever the hell that is, that ran in this race. You had your opportunity. That's what the primary is for. If you have the best candidate, if you have the best ideas, then you need to make that case to the citizens of North Carolina and win. And the reality is one that is very simple. Don Brown didn't win. Not only did he not win, he got his ass handed to him by Michael Whatley. This race was not even close. I saw people posting on social media last night, right before polls closed, that based on the activity that they had seen at the polls, it was almost certain that Don Brown was going to win. You're out of your freaking mind if you thought that was the case. It was never going to be that way. No polling backed it up. No ground enthusiasm backed that up whatsoever. I don't hate Don Brown. I actually like Don Brown. I've had the opportunity to talk to him a couple of times. Great guy. Solid patriot. This is not an indictment of Don Brown. It's not. But the fact of the matter is very simple. You're going to have to go up against a guy who is literally going to be able to raise $300, $400, $500, $600 million if he needs it to win this race. That's Roy Cooper. And who is the best candidate to do that, in my opinion? Michael Whatley. That's who I voted for. I didn't mention that here on this show. No, I didn't. I'm a strong believer of providing individuals with the information. You make up your own mind. I'm not going to sit here during the primary and say, oh, you have to vote for Michael Whatley. If you don't vote for Michael Whatley, you're a fool. No, I didn't say that. Not once did I ever disparage any of these other candidates. That's for the voters to decide. That's for the voters to choose. And they did, overwhelmingly. 64.6% to 15.6%. Nearly a 50-point margin between the two candidates. If you don't like that, if you think that's a bad idea, well, then you should have made your case to the voters. You obviously didn't. So the race is set. Michael Whatley versus former Democrat Governor Roy Cooper. Strap in, ladies and gentlemen. It is going to be an absolutely insane political year across the state of North Carolina. This Senate race is going to generate insane amounts of money, advertising, door knockers. It is going to be a wild year. And your options, again, are pretty binary. It's a 1 and a 0. You either win as the Republicans or you allow Roy Cooper to become your senator. That's the reality check that I think some on the political right need to hear this morning. And if you want Roy Cooper to win, fine. Change your party affiliation and get the hell out of the way so that folks like myself and many of you listening can get on the ground and actually do the work, right? Because it's not just me sitting here on my ivory tower telling you. No, I'm going to go out. I'm going to knock doors. I'm going to make phone calls because I actually believe in putting my money where my mouth is, not being a jackass on social media, not posting on Telegram about how great of a patriot I am. Put up or shut up. I'm interested in winning. I don't like when Democrats win. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I want to win. We have better ideas than them. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to put my time where my mouth is. I would encourage you to do the same. Regardless of whether you supported Michael Whatley or not, that's our choice. That's who more than 400,000 Republicans across the state of North Carolina voted for. Get in line or get the hell out. Those are your two options. I'm not playing around. You're going to see a very different side of me as we go through this primary election, as many individuals on the right continue to propagate this garbage. One quick thing I will note, and I will call this out because she put out a great post on social media yesterday. Michelle Morrow, who ran in this race, she recently was the Republican nominee for state superintendent. She is leading by example, and I give her a whole hell of a lot of credit for that. She posted this on her X last night. Congratulations to Michael Whatley. Tomorrow, referring to today, we all join forces to become Team America to defeat Roy Cooper, to take back North Carolina and protect President Donald Trump's America First agenda. Hashtag United, we all win. If Michelle Morrow can do this as somebody that ran against Michael Whatley, then you sure as hell need to be able to do it too. That's what's at stake. That's this election that's going to play out. I don't have any other way to sugarcoat it or say it any nicer. That's the situation. We are going to keep a very close eye on this. I'm already in contact with the Whatley camp, try and schedule an interview. We'll hopefully chat with him in the coming weeks as this race begins to come into focus, and it is going to be an absolute sprint all the way until November. A lot of other interesting races across the state of North Carolina, including a 2-vote margin in a North Carolina Senate district. We'll get to those details coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to thank the Law Group here in Wilmington, as I got a very little sleep last night, was putting all of this together. The only way I'm able to do that, the only way that is possible, and get these clips, crunch these numbers, do this data is because of the financial support of the Law Group in Wilmington. And I want to remind you that when legal challenges arise, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Put your trust in the Law Group. Since 2003, Melissa Gott and her team of experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, maybe you're navigating a real estate transaction, or hopefully not, but you could be in a position where you need a strong criminal defense. If so, regardless of the issue, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. They're located in downtown Wilmington, not some big national law firm. Melissa Gott and her team, they live in our community, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call for any legal questions you might be dealing with, 910-251-6088, or online at lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the Law Group and their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. All right, quick break. A lot more as it relates to election results coming up as the Nick Craig Show continues right here, streaming live 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. Good Wednesday to you. Thanks for staying tuned here on the Nick Craig Show. A busy program today. Primary election day taking place last night across the state of North Carolina. Most races, we are pretty clear where they stand right now. However, there are quite a few that are still too close to call, and one of them is a wild race taking place up in all of Rockingham County and portions of northern Guilford County. You're probably familiar with the name. If you would consider yourself a North Carolina politico, you are familiar with the name Phil Berger. He has been in the North Carolina General Assembly going all the way back to the year 2000. He has served as the longest president pro tem of the North Carolina Senate when Republicans swelled to their majority back in 2011 on the heels of the Tea Party movement nationally. Phil Berger was elected the president pro tem of the North Carolina General Assembly, and since that period of time, he has become by far, at least in my estimation, the most powerful man in North Carolina politics, more powerful than Roy Cooper, more powerful than Josh Stein. And he is facing and was facing an insanely close primary challenge in his home county by Rockingham County Sheriff Sam Page. And ladies and gentlemen, you talk about a nail biter, it doesn't get any more nail biting than this. Sam Page, with the unofficial election results, again, these are all unofficial, Sam Page has beat Phil Berger by 2 votes. Now, that comment is a little bit disingenuous, even for me. Let me explain how this is going to play out. With all of the election night results in that we have thus far, Sam Page received 13,077 votes. Phil Berger received 13,075 votes. Yes, that is in fact a 2-vote margin for Sam Page. However, there are still ballots to be counted. No, not late mail-in ballots, not ballot stuffing that is that is going on in Rockingham or portions of northern Guilford County. There are individuals that voted yesterday during the primary that voted a provisional ballot for a variety of issues. Maybe they voted in the wrong polling place, wrong location. Maybe they didn't have an ID with them. There are plenty of those individuals. The number could be 10, 15, it could be 100, 200. We don't exactly know what the number is. We will find that out in the coming days. So there are likely going to be hundreds of more votes added to this race. Plus, those that vote by mail, absentee by mail, are required to have their ballots in by 7:30 p.m. on election night. That was last night. As long as your ballot is in the hands of Board of Election staff by 7:30 p.m., it is a counted ballot. However, it has not been processed. It has not been tallied. You can walk in at 7:29 p.m. on election night, turn in your absentee by mail ballot, and you're good to go. Your vote will count. However, it has not yet been tabulated. The ballot has not been gone through. It has not been run through a voting machine for it to be added to the count. So there will likely be hundreds of more votes in this race. And there's going to be an interesting process that is going to go on here called provisional curing. Both sides, both the Page camp and the Berger camp, will get a list of outstanding provisional ballots. These are individuals that likely have to go back to the Board of Elections, and maybe they have to bring their ID with them to verify. There's a variety of different reasons that you could have a provisional ballot. And those camps are going to go after voters that they believe voted for them, individuals that they believe are going to give them additional votes, and try and cure those ballots. So this final election night total, which is unofficial, 1377 to 1375, those 2 numbers are going to change. How much will they change? Not immediately clear. Will Sam Page still win? Not immediately clear. The thought would be that this is going to obviously stay probably pretty close. There are some overseas ballots that has likely still have not been tabulated. But I can say this for certain. There is a very strong likelihood, unless either Phil Berger or Sam Page single-handedly picks up hundreds of votes and the other one does not, which seems very unlikely, this is going to go to a recount. And it is going to be a very lengthy, a very drawn-out recount. There are going to be a lot of lawyers involved. There is going to be a lot of money involved. Speaking of money, article over at carolinajournal.com talking about this race, just to show how important Phil Berger is and the power that he has. Take a listen to this, reading directly from the article. The latest campaign finance reports show that from the onset of the 2025 primary election cycle through February the 14th, that's when the last campaign finance report deadline was, Berger's campaign and outside groups supporting his reelection bid spent more than $8.6 million. That is not a typo. That was not supposed to say $80,000 or even $800,000. $8.6 million on a North Carolina Senate primary for the General Assembly. That is how much was spent either by Berger himself or on behalf of Berger. And here's the wildest part about it. In comparison, Rockingham County Sheriff Sam Page, who, by the way, has been the sheriff there since 1998, well-known guy, has served in the office now for almost 30 years, raised $81,000. And looking at those unofficial election results, he is up by 2 votes. $8.6 million by Berger, $81,000 raised by Page, and it is a literal tie. It is as close of a margin, almost literally, as you can get. This goes to show you the importance, at least from Berger's side, in winning this election. That between him and his affiliated groups, outside groups supporting him, would spend nearly $9 million on a primary. And there's an interesting side of this. Dr. Andy Jackson, who was over at the John Locke Foundation, made an interesting point in this article. He said this: I think a win gives Berger more relief than joy. It will keep Berger in office, but it comes at a cost. And this is very important. The money that he and his allies spent on this race is money that will not go to help other Republican candidates in the general election. And that's a really good point. Regardless of whether Berger wins or not. And at this point, anybody that says, oh, I can tell you for certain that he's going to win, or I can tell you for certain he's going to lose, does not know that. We don't have enough data to make that point as of yet. I'm almost guaranteed that there's going to be a recount. But that point that Andy Jackson from the John Locke Foundation points out is very important. That is $10 million that could have been spent in swing districts in the general election that is now gone. It's spent. It is expensed. The money is no longer there. And that is a very important thing. Phil Berger, he knows how to raise money. He's been doing this a long time. He's been in the General Assembly 26 years. He's got a war machine behind him that can fundraise. That money is now gone, meaning that you've got now the Republicans in the North Carolina General Assembly that are going to have to make up this difference, and that's going to be $10 less million that Republicans are likely going to have on the table to battle against Democrats coming up in November. Regardless of what the outcome is, as Dr. Jackson notes, this has major political implications across the state of North Carolina. And it is beyond pale to think that you could spend $8.6 million in a race that in total had, a little over 26,000 votes? What's the math on that? You take $8.6 million and then you divide it by, again, all of the votes in the race. So we'll round it up to 27,000 votes with everything counted. That is an average of $318 a vote in that race, just from Berger's side. That's an insane amount of money to spend on an election. But it goes to show you the importance of his seat for him and his affiliated groups, the importance of keeping him in the North Carolina General Assembly. And so that is one of the other major races that we watched, that we are not only did we watch come in Tuesday night, everybody in North Carolina political circles jamming the F5 button on their keyboard to try and get the new results in and wait for these final tallies to come in. Nuts. Absolutely insane. This is going to be a very long and very drawn out process. If I was a gambling man, if I had $8.6 million to put on the table, I'd put it on that this is going to be a very expensive, it already has been, a very lengthy and very drawn out process. As Phil Berger and his team, Sam Page and his team are going to get every possible vote in on this election. It is going to be an interesting time for those living in portions of or all of Rockingham and portions of Guilford County. It is going to be absolutely insane. So where do we go from here? Talked about the United States Senate race, talked about Michael Whatley's very solid election night victory, Roy Cooper's very solid election night victory. Good stuff there. Some other interesting races as well. A bunch of incumbents lost. This is pretty crazy. Representative Reese Pirtle, who is a Republican in North Carolina's 65th congressional district, which, by the way, is Rockingham County, has lost to a frequent guest here on the Nick Craig Show, Seth Woodall. He is an attorney from Rockingham County. He joins us about once a month or so to talk about a variety of issues and topics. Seth Woodall won that election 57-39. Representative Keith Kidwell has lost to Darren Armstrong in the 79th House District, 52-48. Longtime Representative Kelly Hastings has lost to brand new political newcomer Caroline Easton, 54-46. Representative Mark Pless out in the western half of the state, House District 118, lost to Jimmy Rogers, 55-45. And Kevin Crutchfield, who recently lost an election in the North Carolina General Assembly, well, he is back. He beat appointed incumbent Senator Chris Meismer, 54-46. Now, on the Democrat side of the aisle, we saw some interesting results as well. A couple of Democrats that have been voting with Republicans, and we kind of walked through this process during last year's General Assembly long session. There were a couple of veto overrides that Republicans needed at least one Democrat to cross the aisle on in the North Carolina House, and they were successful at doing that. Those Democrats had a target on their back from the Democrat Party. They included Representatives Carla Cunningham and Representative Shelley Willingham. Both of those individuals lost, and Carla Cunningham got blown out in the primary. Willingham lost to Patricia Smith, 56-44, and Representative Cunningham lost to Rodney Sadler, 70-22. That is a major margin, a major gap. Current Democrat Governor Josh Stein endorsed Representative Cunningham's opponent. The Democrat Party cut her off from any access to their data system. They were not happy with these Democrats voting with Republicans in the General Assembly. So they literally primaried them and kicked them out of their jobs. Now, they'll continue to serve through the remainder of this year, but that is a wild situation. So where do we go with all of this? Both parties have their issues. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the GOP is all hunky-dory and the Democrat Party is all hunky-dory. No, there's plenty of infighting. It's politics. There's always going to be some level of infighting. There's always going to be some level of disagreement. The question is, what do you do with that? Because that's really, to me, where the rubber meets the road. In a primary, it's a dog-eat-dog situation. No question about it. It's nasty. It's dirty. It's in the mud. It should be. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not afraid of that. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. The best candidate that makes its way through the primary needs to be coalesced behind. That's just the way that this needs to work. And so both Republicans and Democrats are going to have to work on this question of unity over the next couple of months. I think it's probably a little bit of a larger issue on the Republican side of the aisle right now. Again, looking at the Senate race, Roy Cooper won with 92% of the vote. So I think it's fair to say that he has a very large base of a very large majority within the Democrat Party. Democrats tend to like him, and it shouldn't be a surprise that that's the case. He was a very effective governor for the left. He was able to ram through his portions of his radical progressive agenda when he was in the governor's mansion for 8 years. They like Roy Cooper, and they have good reason to. Michael Whatley's election margin, not quite as high as that, but an overwhelming victory for him. And so the question is going to be unity. Some comments coming in on the show. Republicans need to unite. There needs to be unity. Now, let's be clear with what that word means. Unity does not mean that you are required to lay down all of your principles, lay down everything that you support, lay down any sort of morals that you might have. That's not the point. At least it's not to me. But unity should mean pretty simply that if nothing else, you go out and you support, if you're a Republican, you support the Republican candidate, in this case, Michael Whatley, in the November election. Unity doesn't mean that you need to open up your bank account and give them $100,000. Unity doesn't mean that you need to spend hours and hours and hours knocking doors. I don't think everybody has that responsibility. If you truly don't like Michael Whatley, if you truly don't think he's a good candidate, then vote for him in November and keep your mouth shut. That's all I'm asking. I've had plenty of elections, both locally and statewide, where the candidate that I supported didn't win. And the option is, again, always either A, losing to the Democrats, or B, winning. And I'm always going to, in this case, choose option B. I'm always going to want to win, especially when you're going up against the left. Ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about the current direction of the Democrat Party in America. I hope over the last couple of months I have brought you enough evidence, enough clips, enough articles, enough information to back up the case, as the president so eloquently said during the State of the Union a couple of weeks ago. These people are crazy. They are. They're verifiably insane. They're nuts. Their policies, their ideas, they suck. They're disastrous for the future of America. They're disastrous for you and your family. They're disastrous if you're a small business owner. It's a mess. You know, they want to preach all this affordability, this, affordability, that. They don't believe in any of that. They believe in giving handouts to the solar energy industry and the wind turbine companies and the green this and the green that and the group that saves sea turtles. And I mean, that's what they're in the business of. You saw it during the Biden administration. They had this great idea of what? Building an electric charging network across the highway system. They allocated hundreds of millions of dollars to this program and built like 6 EV chargers across the country at an average tune of millions of dollars per charger. That's what they're in the business of. It's not a secret where the Democrat Party stands. It's not a secret where their policies are currently. At least it's not to me. My eyes are wide open on this. Even as exhausted as I am today after a late night with the primary, my eyes are wide open on this. They are not hiding it anymore. It's right out in your face for everybody to see. You even heard a little bit of it from Roy Cooper in his comments. Now, he's going to try and push himself towards the middle in this general election. He's going to play his oh shucks farmer from Nash County, good old country boy Roy. That's what he's going to be pulling over the next 8 months. You need to reject that. And you need to coalesce behind Michael Whatley, whether you like the guy or not, whether you voted for the guy or not, and deliver a Republican, a conservative victory here in North Carolina. The alternative, the other option, is a radical, out-of-control progressive representing North Carolina in the United States Senate, potentially even flipping the majority in the Senate from Republican to Democrat. I'm not interested in that. If you're interested in that, have at it. But I'm not going to advocate for it. I'm not going to do that. I'm interested in winning. I'm interested in beating Democrats. I'm not saying you have to be, but that's where I am. That's where my head is at, and that is what I'm going to advocate for. And so if you want to spend, again, as I already mentioned, sounded like a little bit like a broken record. If you want to spend the next 8 months trashing Michael Whatley, I'm not going to put up with your shit. I'm just not. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to make the point that the things that you're talking about, the ideas that you're laying out, are just so incredibly disastrous. I'm in the business of winning, and I hope you are too. We'll keep a close eye on this as we continue through the next couple of months. All right, on to some local results. A couple of very interesting local primaries also taking place Tuesday night across New Hanover County, southeastern North Carolina. We turn our attention first to the New Hanover County Board of Commissioners, an interesting primary race taking there, which featured a current Democrat, Rob Zappel, current Democrat City Councilwoman, Celeste Andrews, current Democrat school board member Judy Justice and a relatively political newcomer, LaShonda Wallace. And well, the results are in, and it will be Rob Zapple and LaShonda Wallace that will be heading to the general election. Celeste Andrews, who had a very big city council election victory just a couple of years ago, was not successful. Judy Justice, who is a terrible politician, got her ass handed to her overwhelmingly in this race. She was thousands of votes behind Zapple and Wallace. So obviously the Democrat Party here rejected her continued nonsense. It is going to be Rob Zapple and LaShonda Wallace on the Democrat side of the aisle, and current New Hanover County Commission Chairwoman Leanne Pierce and Richard Collier on the Republican side of the aisle. That is going to be a very important race to watch as we approach November. The power and the majority within the New Hanover County Board of Commissioners is on the table. I can promise you, if LaShonda Wallace and Rob Zapple get reelected, your tax bill is going to go through the freaking roof. Saw Rob out at the polls yesterday. Rob's a nice guy. I like Rob as a person. His policies are tax and spend. I'm not interested in tax and spend. That doesn't make my life more affordable, to use a great term from the political left. On to the New Hanover County Board of Education. On the Republican side of the aisle, you had 3 incumbents running for re-election in a 5-person primary. The incumbents were Pat Bradford, Josie Barnhart, and Melissa Mason. 2 other individuals, Amy Dunning and Chris Sutton, also Republicans. 5 candidates for 4 seats. The top 4 advancing, and while 2 of the incumbents are advancing, 1 is not. Pat Bradford, Josie Barnhart, Amy Dunning, and Chris Sutton all successful in a pretty close Republican primary. 8,300 votes for Bradford as the top vote getter, 6,700 votes for Mason, who fell into 5th place. She is currently serving on the Board of Education. She's the vice chair of that board. She did not make it through the primary meeting. She will not have the opportunity to defend her seat coming up in November. This is also a very pivotal race for Republicans. Josie, Pat, Melissa, and Pete Wildeboer, who's the current chair, swept the Board of Education back in 2022. This was during the time of COVID shutdowns and putting all of this trans garbage and crap in your kids' schools. Republicans had a banner night, election night 2022, sweeping that election, winning all 4 seats, and now they're in a position where they have to defend 2 incumbents, Pat Bradford and Josie Barnhart, moving on. Amy Dunning and Chris Sutton will also go to the general election. Melissa Mason did not meet the cut. She came in 5th place out of 4 seats. Similar situation ongoing on the Democrat side of the aisle. However, none of them are incumbents, and the 4 winners there, Brittany LaRue, Wendy Dale, Jerry Jones, and Rick Sutherland. Those 4 Democrats will battle against the 4 Republicans that I just laid out. And interestingly to note, Nelson Beaulieu, who was previously on the Board of Education, lost in a primary back a couple of years ago, lost once again, as he proves he continues to be even unpalatable to the Democrat Party himself, as he came thousands of votes behind the vote winner there in Brittany LaRue, who had a very significant election night victory, more than 14,000 votes for her. Wendy Dale, 11,000. Jerry Jones, 11,000. Rick Sutherland, a little over 10,000. Nelson Beaulieu way down at 8,700 votes as the Democrat Party continues to reject him. This is now the 2nd primary election that he has lost, and a tough time for Nelson Beaulieu. When he was on the Board of Education, he did an absolutely terrible job, and it is no surprise that the Democrat voters here in New Hanover County continue to reject him. I mean, it makes complete and total sense. So that's it. That's the recap. It has been an incredibly busy, and was a very busy evening. Congratulations to all of the winners, to everybody, whether you won or lost. It is not easy. I personally have not done it. I've got close friends that have, and they all say the same thing. It is not an easy thing to put your name on the ballot. It is not an easy thing to give up family dinners, vacations, and other important things in your life for public service. So for anybody that is willing to do that, it is an incredible sacrifice. Regardless of whether your candidate won or lost, you should be incredibly thankful for everybody that was in that race. And again, whether we're talking about the United States Senate race, whether we're talking about the county commission race, the Board of Education race that I just mentioned, any other races that you're seeing here, it's time to unify. We know what the left wants to do. I'm not interested in that, and I hope you aren't either. We are going to spend a lot of time throughout the remainder of this year highlighting the disaster that is the Democrat Party, the disastrous policies that are pushed by individuals who will be on the ballot in November. And that's how I'm going to make the case to those that might be a little weary. Oh, I don't support this person, this, that, or the other. Okay, well, here's your alternative. So hopefully you got out and voted yesterday. If not, well, you snooze, you lose. It's too late. The primary elections are said and done, and it is full steam ahead to the November general election. We'll have the most comprehensive and complete coverage across southeastern North Carolina right here on the Nick Craig Show. Portions of this program are only made possible thanks to your financial support. Again, this stuff takes a lot of work, and I can't thank everybody enough for their support over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. You can get access to daily show notes and more. I'll have a couple of different links in the show today for all of these election results. All of that available, patreon.com/Nick Craig. It's also made possible thanks to Melissa Gott and her team over at the Law Group. Visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. It's also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll be back here tomorrow morning on The Nick Craig Show.